Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Intro to Business. And today we're going to talk about loans. Okay. So hopefully you're enjoying these short videos. And this is another one, maybe the last. All right. The thing that we're going to talk about today is loans. As you are probably aware of in your lifetime in our society, you're going to have to take out loans. You want a car, you want a house. Um, you might be asking, like, well, why, if I just have $25,000 in an account, why can't I just use that to buy a car? Well, the reality of it is that if you had $25,000 in your account, you might want to use some of that as a down payment, borrow to buy the car, and then use that money for other things because in our society, we have a lot of costs. We have a lot of wants. Remember, wants are infinite. So, and we also have needs. And so to take the entire chunk of the $25,000 and put it all into a car um, can be a little tough for some people. So we're going to talk about loans. Okay, so these are your loans. We have an installment loan, which means you're going to agree to make payments over time. You have a single payment loan. Okay, so this might be you're not going to pay anything until 7 months from now. You pay it all off. Okay, and then we have a promissory note. Okay, excuse me, a promissory note is a written promise to repay a debt. Okay, so if your father-in-law gives you a loan someday and you just draw up a note together on a piece of paper and you both sign it and you both agree on it and date it, etc. By the way, these are valid in the court of law. The courts do see these as a valid um, form of loans. So don't take this lightly if you enter into a promissory note. Okay, so a few things to know about loans before we really dig into them is collateral. Okay, now my daughter just asked me, like, why can't you just borrow $1 million and then go invest it? Well, you can't because you need to have enough assets, meaning like property and things that you own, houses, cars, etc., that add up to $1 million if you're going to borrow $1 million. Okay, and you might be thinking, if that's the case, if I need enough assets to back a loan, then how does anybody ever get a loan, like on a house or a car? Okay, well, in this case, the house itself is the collateral. So if you buy a house for $250,000 and you borrow the $250,000, if you don't pay, then the bank takes back the $250,000 house. So they're not really out that money. They might be out some of it, but not all of it. And so that's how that works. You need to have enough assets, or you're putting up what you're borrowing to buy itself as the collateral. Okay, then we have a secured loan. Okay, if you don't repay the loan, then the lender gets to keep the collateral, whatever you put up. In some cases, a bank might be a little reluctant to give you a loan because you don't have a long track record. Um, so a cosigner might be able to sign on the loan with you, meaning like if you don't make the payments, then they have to jump in and pay it off too. So in some cases, you may need to have a cosigner in order to get a loan. So hopefully your parents are willing to do that. In some cases they are, and in some cases they aren't. Okay, you can read this. I'm going to leave the slides in Google Classroom for you to look over. But the main thing I want you to know about borrowing is you're going to have to make a down payment. Okay. Now you're going to pay part of the purchase at the time of the sale. Okay. And then you're going to pay a finance charge on the amount owed. Okay. Now we're going to talk about home loans for a minute. Okay. So we're going to do home loans, and I want to amortize the loan. What this means is if you borrow $250,000 to buy a home and you're going to pay it back over 30 years, which is a pretty typical loan, I want you to see what that looks like. So I'm going to click on this calendar thing. Okay. And I'm going to show you what this looks like. So we're going to, let's say $250,000 to buy a house. Okay. We're going to make 12 payments a year. The rate right now is at about 4%, a little bit less, but we're just going to leave it at 4% as a placeholder. Now, 360. So if that's 12 payments per year, that's 30 years, right? So we're going to leave that as 360. And I'm going to amortize or show the amortization schedule. I'm going to click calculate. So we're going to be able to see what the payments are going to be. Okay. So every month you're going to have to pay this amount. $1,193 to borrow that 250 grand to buy the house. Okay. Now, the thing is about that payment is that not all of that goes towards paying off the 250. Most of that actually goes towards paying off the interest. So, as you can see in your first payment, okay, $833 goes towards paying the interest, and you're only knocking down, okay, the principal amount by $360. Okay. So that kind of stinks. So early on in your loans, especially home loans, most of the money is going to go towards paying off interest. And you're only knocking down your principal just a little bit. Later on in the loan, okay, you'll see at about year 15, it starts to reverse. And later on in the loan, you'll see, okay, we're going to zoom way down, that now towards the end, most of my money is going towards paying off the principal that I owe and just a few dollars into interest. But it takes a long time until that starts to flip flop. So I just wanted you to see that. I think that's a pretty significant thing to know moving forward, that if you're going to buy a house and you're going to own it for 2 years, you're not going to have a lot of principal built up into the house because you've been paying off mostly the interest on the loan. Okay. More fun times. Okay. Next thing is some people find that they can't pay back loans, even though they promised to and they intended to. But in our society, it could be something as simple as something comes up medically. They get sick, a family member gets sick, mom breaks her leg, and you need to come out of the workforce and help mom get around. So it could be any number of unintended things that happen in your life that could really make paying back a loan difficult. Okay, so this is a reality for a lot of people, and don't think that you're immune to this. It could happen to you. Okay, so a couple different things to know about. There's a term called bankruptcy. You might have heard of it before. And what it is when people find that they can't pay back their loans, they go to a lawyer and they try to get some help. Okay, there's a couple different types of bankruptcy that you could file for. Okay, I'm going to let you watch this video on your own if you want to. And one of the concepts that they'll do is, as part of this bankruptcy, is as you work, they're going to garnish your wages, which means they're going to go to your employer and they're going to say, Sue owes us $7,000. So out of her paycheck, we want you to take 60% of her paycheck and give it to us. And she only gets 40% of her paycheck. And that's a legal thing to do. It's called garnishment of wages. Not fun when they get into that. These are different types of bankruptcy. You can read over them. Chapter 7, your assets are sold. Okay. Chapter 13 is usually for high income debtors. And it'll let you keep some of your assets, like your house and your car, because that's kind of like your well-being. All right. Chapter 11 is primarily for businesses. Okay. In either case, you're going to see that you need to come up with a strategy for paying back the money. Don't think bankruptcy is a get out of jail free card. Okay. Instead, what they do is they create a plan of action for you paying back the debt. It is not going to wipe out all of your debt. Now, it might wipe out some, but that's only to make it manageable for you to be able to pay it back. Okay. The other problem that this happens is it hits your credit pretty significantly. Okay. On employment documents, they often ask, okay, have you filed for bankruptcy ever in your life, or have you filed in the last 7 months? That question is there. So it could affect your ability to get jobs. It's going to affect your credit, which means any future loans, even getting an apartment. Let's say you're falling hard times and you get bankruptcy and you walk away from your house, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I mean, no one's going to let you buy a house in the next couple of years. And even the renter is going to look at your credit and ask questions. So bankruptcy is not a favorable thing to get into. It's usually a very last resort. It takes years and years to recover from it. Okay. And on your credit report, there's no one like erasing bankruptcy. Okay. So it's no one's job to go in there and erase bankruptcy after 7 years. So if you hear other people say like, oh, it gets erased after 7 years, that's not true. There's not someone's job in your credit report like erasing things that are 7 years old. So just know that it stays there forever. Okay, another thing that you want to know about is short sale or foreclosure. So this is if you have a house, okay, and you decide that, or you find rather that you can't pay your payment anymore. There's two different strategies then to get out of the loan. Okay, neither is good, and again, both are going to affect your credit pretty significantly, just like bankruptcy would. Some people do this hand in hand with bankruptcy. So let's just talk about the differences. In a short sale, you put your house up on the market, okay, but the house is worth less than the actual loan. And so rather than the buyer coming to the table, the bank is going to agree to just absorb that money. Okay. And the reason why they'll agree with this is because you're going to be allowed to stay in your house while it's on the market. Okay. And you're probably going to take care of it in the meantime because you're living there. As opposed to in a foreclosure, the homeowner who owes probably more on the house than it's worth just walks out. Okay. In a lot of cases, they leave the house in pretty bad shape because they're angry at the situation. And so banks really like the short sale. They'd rather work with the seller than have the foreclosure situation where the house is heavily damaged and the bank needs to hire someone to come in and fix up the house before it can go up on the market. So the banks prefer the short sale, but they really don't like either one, and it's going to impact your credit for a very long time. But those are the two ways that people get out of home loans. Okay, one final thought is this lesson paints the picture of credit as an evil. And I would amend that by saying that credit can be good if the debtor uses it responsibly and stays within their means. That's the difficult part for a lot of people. Okay. The most common question I get in this unit is why do people use credit if it could be so bad for the debtor? And I'm going to trim this down a little bit. Okay. And the answer is that most people don't have $350,000 just sitting in a bank account or $50,000 for a car. If they did, they wouldn't want to use all of it on a major purchase. So for the people who do have a significant amount of money in an account, it's probably an investment that makes 8 to 12 return, as we learned when we talked about stocks. So they'd rather take a loan and pay only 4 to 5% interest than give up the 8 to 12% returns. Okay. Remember this. You can take out a loan when you're 40 to help your child through college. But if you don't put money away for retirement throughout your life, you can't take a loan out for retirement. So if you're 50 and you have an account with 100 grand and you're paying off lump sum in your house, or are you keeping that money to invest it for your retirement? On that, have a good day and enjoy